Today's video is all about how to get your baby to sleep through the night without crying it out. For those of y'all that are new, my name is Elizabeth. I am a food and wellness blogger, also a mama to an 8-month-old. Isaiah started sleeping through the night at 5 months old, and these are the things that I did that I think helped contribute to that. He is exclusively breastfed. If you're breastfeeding, I'm also gonna share the strategy we did for night weaning and how he weaned from nighttime feeds. I'm gonna start off by sharing some tips and advice and things, and then towards the end, I'll kind of get more into like the method, if that's what you wanna call it. So if you're not interested in the tips and tricks and whatever, but I do think they are important to help set you up for success when it comes to sleep, then you can skip ahead. First thing I wanted to talk about is following eat, play, sleep, as opposed to nursing to sleep. So you don't want your baby to associate sleep with nursing or a bottle or food or any of that, because then from the get-go you are establishing this connection between needing food in order to fall asleep. Then when they wake up in the middle of the night, it's going to be a lot harder for them to settle themselves without food, just because that is the association they've had their whole life. So from the beginning, I was very particular about making sure Isaiah would eat when he woke up from naps, as opposed to nursing him to sleep. Next thing I think is important is to establish a bedtime routine, and this is because when babies are born, they have like no idea the difference between day and night. Having a bedtime routine is super important. For us, we pretty much did everything that we did the same for nap time except bath and lotion, and Michael primarily does this. So when Michael gets home from work, he'll do a bath and lotion and then hand him to me, and I'll nurse him. For a while we were doing a bottle, but now we've gone back to nursing, just because he's decreased his nursing sessions to like 4 a day, and it makes me really sad. So I just don't like him taking bottles if he doesn't have to, but sometimes he'll do a bottle. But so Isaiah knows when he bath, lotion, jammy sleep sack, and then Michael gives them to me, that those are all his cues for bedtime as opposed to nap time. The next tip is gonna be kind of confusing, but it's to put your baby down drowsy but not asleep. And I remember hearing this all the time, and I was so confused, like, what do people mean? Basically, you want them in just a very sleepy state, but giving them the opportunity to put themselves to sleep. So not rocking to sleep, nursing to sleep, making sure you leave the room before their eyes are closed. And this can be a gradual thing, but honestly, we started doing this when Isaiah was probably like 5 or 6 weeks old, and by 6 weeks he was putting himself to sleep. So the way that we did this, Michael and I, was we would just make sure we would watch for his sleepy cues and watch wake windows, and when we knew it was about time for him to go down and he was showing us those signs, we would put him in his sleep sack, go into his room, turn on the white noise, and watch him kind of get a little bit drowsy, set him in his bassinet, put our hand on his chest and kind of rock him and just shush. So we're staying present with him, so he's not, he wouldn't really start crying because we were still there with him, but giving him that opportunity to get drowsy in his bassinet and then walk away before his eyes were closed. And that would give him the chance to put himself to sleep. He was also, once he wasn't in his swaddle anymore and he had his hands, he could use his hands to self-soothe. But if your baby has a passy, then you can also do passy and just kind of rock them and let them just know that they don't need to be rocked or nursed to sleep in order to put themselves to sleep. Another tip to get your baby to sleep through the night is to pack in daytime calories. You wanna pack in all the calories during the day so that they have a better chance of sleeping through the night, and you know that when they wake up, they're probably not hungry, or that might not be your first go-to, is to automatically make a bottle or nurse them, because you kind of have this mental note like, well, they ate 8 times, like they had this many ounces, they could just be waking up out of a habit. So I'll go into later like the method that we did and how I established the certain amount of hours before I would actually nurse him. But I would just say packing in those calories during the day is really important, because you don't want them to build the habit of getting in most of their calories at night, because then they won't eat as much during the day, and it's like becoming nocturnal, but in terms of food, if that makes sense. This is a big one, and that is going to be to know the difference between whining and fussing and actual crying. So while I never did like the full-on cry it out method, I definitely let Isaiah fuss and whine a little bit in his bassinet or crib before immediately going in there, just because they need the opportunity. I mean, I remember talking to my mom about it. I'm one of 7 kids, so she is well experienced, and she's like, sometimes babies just need to let off steam, like they've had a long day. And when she would put it that way, I just kind of was like, okay, I'll take a step back and like give him a few minutes, because it was so hard for me. I'm just really not strong when it comes to Isaiah crying or being unhappy. So, and neither is Michael. So together we just were kind of like immediately wanting to go in there. So know the difference between their types of cries. So if he was fussing, then we would give him a few minutes. But if it was like a full-on cry, then we would go in immediately and do the hand on the chest thing and try to help settle him, put his passy in, like sleep assistance, I think is what they call it. So we would do that if he was actually crying. Next tip is know your baby's sleepy cues and wake windows. I had no idea what a wake window was when I first had Isaiah. I remember reading like online, trying to figure out what the heck I'm supposed to do with this tiny little baby that I brought home. And I literally thought they just ate and slept. I didn't even know that when they were like 3 days old, they were supposed to have like a wake window. Anyways, now his wake windows are a lot longer, but they are constantly changing. So it's really important to know your baby's sleepy cues, because sometimes, you know, you read what their wake window should be on the internet, and every baby is different. They're not a robot. They're not going to fall into this category. So for Isaiah, he'll start to get more fussy. He rubs his eyes. He's yawning. He gets red eyebrows. That's a big one for him. And when we would notice these things, we're like, okay, time to go, you know, put him in the swaddle and get him in his room to give him that chance to put himself to sleep, because you don't want an overtired baby if you have them stay awake for too long. An overtired baby is really hard to settle, and they're way less likely to settle themselves. I feel like it's almost like they catch a second wind or something, and then they're just like overstimulated and can't settle. So know their wake windows and their sleepy cues. Next tip for getting a baby to sleep through the night is to set the mood. For us, that is a completely dark room. So we have blackout curtains. White noise is a big one. We've done that since the hospital. I brought a portable white noise machine to the hospital. The sleep sack, and he has his passy, and then also just making the temperature is controlled to where they like. So for him, it's usually like 68 to 72 degrees, and that's just how we keep our house, and it seems to work for him. So that is just setting the mood for him. So every time we go into his room, it just sets the scene that like, okay, it's bedtime, it's nap time, whatever it is. But now white noise is such a good cue for him that we bring the portable one in the car, and when we do road trips and we turn that on and cover his car seat, he knows like, okay, it's time for me to start to get settled. Or if I'm walking him in the stroller and I need him to take like a power nap, and I bring the white noise, it's just that has set the mood, and it's become these cues to him that it is time for sleep. Next thing I want to talk about to help your baby sleep is daytime sleep and naps, because these are, in my opinion, going to directly impact his nighttime sleep. Good daytime sleep is good nighttime sleep. So like I talked about, being overtired or having an overtired baby is really difficult. So if your baby doesn't sleep well through the day, it's going to be a lot harder for them to get settled at night, in my experience. I have some people that say their baby takes horrible naps all day, but they sleep through the night, so they don't really care. I am very happy that Isaiah takes 2 long naps a day, because I would never be able to get anything done otherwise. So he primarily takes 2 long naps. Sometimes it's 1 short one, 1 long one. Like he just took a 2.5-hour nap, which actually I don't usually let him sleep that long, but he took a really bad first nap. So I felt like I wanted him to make it up, because you want them to get a certain amount of hours of daytime sleep to have good nighttime sleep. Also, to go along with this, you don't want the naps to get too close to bedtime, because then obviously they won't be tired. Like I said, his wake windows are always changing. Right now he's at about 3 hours. So at about 3 hours is when he'll take his next nap, or 3 hours after his last nap of the day is when bedtime should be. So usually that's between 6:30 and 7. But if something weird were to happen, and say he woke up at 2 o'clock and we have like 4.5, 5 hours till bedtime, then I'll let him take like a power nap around 5, and that will probably just be in the stroller, or I'll let him contact nap for like 20 minutes, and that's just enough to get him to bedtime. But I don't want him taking a full nap at 5 o'clock, because then he'll wake up like an hour before he's supposed to go to bed, and then he'll be completely wired and probably not go to sleep till like 9 or 10 p.m., which just isn't gonna fly in my house. Some people, that is when their baby's bedtime is, and it works for them. For us, we are morning people, so he goes to bed at 6:30 and then wakes up at about 6. Okay, so now getting into the method, or whatever you want to say, that Michael and I did in order to get Isaiah to sleep through the night, and how we weaned from nighttime feeds, which I think the two just correlate. So what we did was, we decided that Michael was going to be the designated nighttime person. That doesn't mean I still wasn't waking up, because I could hear the monitor and all that, but we knew that Isaiah associates me with food, so it would be a lot harder for me to go in and settle him than it would be for Michael, because obviously Michael's not gonna nurse him. So that was the first thing, is hopefully if you have like a partner or someone that can help you out, that's awesome. If not, you can definitely still do it. But it just might be a little tougher, because like I said, your baby probably associates you with the food. So that's why we had Michael do it. I waited until Isaiah was about 4 months old before I really attempted doing anything besides nursing him when he would wake up in the middle of the night. Those first 3 to 4 months, you really want to establish your milk supply, and I was just feeding on demand like 24/7. If he was hungry, I was offering. But then once he got to about 4 months old, I kind of was like, you know, I'm pretty sure you can stretch yourself past, I think, like 6 hours. So if he went to bed at 7 and then woke up at midnight, then I was kind of like, in my mind, okay, it hasn't been 6 hours yet. I really don't think that you're hungry. So Michael would go in and try to soothe him, give him his passy, put his hand on his chest, and we would just try other things to get him to fall back asleep without nursing. We would do this, so Michael would do that, and then he would leave, and if Isaiah woke up again, he would do it again. We would do it 3 times, and then if Isaiah woke up another time, I would go in and nurse him, because we assumed at this point, okay, he probably actually is genuinely hungry because he's not falling back asleep. And like I said, we're really lucky that he's a good sleeper, so it was pretty obvious that something else was wrong. Maybe it wasn't that he needed to eat, maybe he had gas, but also babies nurse for comfort, so I also didn't want to just completely deprive him of that if that's what was gonna soothe him. So as much as I would love to sleep, then I would kind of step in. This wasn't until he was about 4 months old that we tried this, and that's when we started, and it worked pretty well. Once he started getting close to 5 months old, I would stretch it, and I think probably to like 7 or 8 hours, we would set a time, and Michael and I would swap off with the monitor and say, okay, if it's after like 3 a.m., then I would just go in by default and nurse him. But if it was before 3 a.m., then Michael would go in and attempt to do that 3 times, max 3 times. And then if it didn't work, I would go in. But it really was working just by having him go in and give him the passy and rock him. And he was slowly recognizing, like, I'm not hungry, I don't need to eat. And so we just kind of broke that habit. I hope this is making sense. But once he turned 5 months old, I think it was kind of sporadically happening that he would go 12 hours. And so I was like, okay, you're definitely capable of this. And so then we just pretty much cut them out. Unless, like I said, Michael would go in 3 times and if he would still cry, but that just didn't really happen anymore. So it was at like 5 months when he officially started sleeping through the night consecutively. So unless literally nothing else would work and he would for some reason wake up, then I would nurse him. But pretty much, yeah, right at 5 months is when he started sleeping 12 hours through the night, not needing anything. And now he will occasionally wake up, mostly just like babbling, and it's really, really cute, but he'll just put himself back to sleep, which is awesome. And then aside from teething was a disaster, and there were like 3 or 4 nights where he woke up probably like every hour, but clearly in so much pain, and we knew that it was teething because he had 2 teeth pop through, and that was probably 3 weeks ago, and he's been sleeping 12 hours ever since those teeth popped through. But I hope this video was helpful. I hope you guys learned some tips and tricks and that you can try this method out and see if it works for you. If you're like me and just really don't want to let your baby cry, I totally understand, but you're doing awesome. If your baby's not sleeping through the night, it doesn't matter. It's so normal for them to wake up their first year. And I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe so you never miss another video. And until next time, I will see you next time.